Welcome back to Open Book Games. I'm Rowan.
And I'm Phil.
We're doing 2 years in 2 minutes with the campaign that Phil is running for me. 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Which I want to point out was a number decided on by Rowan.
Okay. First of all, you're allowed to say no to all of my ridiculous ideas. Anyway. I just realized I literally never say my character's name.
Rowan's character's name is Altea, and she'll be speaking in first person for her summary.
Also, I feel the need to say, so I'm writing this as a book. This is what the book is based on, so they diverge pretty significantly from each other. Like, there are many events that just don't make it into the book, and we'll talk about why in other Writing Wednesday episodes or whatever I called that show. But there are some spoilers in here, so I'm going to edit them out later. Carefully. Don't worry, I won't cheat and make it under 2 minutes.
She might.
I might.
Yeah, we will have probably multiple videos, especially on Rowan's writing section, about what kinds of things in D&D don't make for a good book or other kind of format, and what kinds of changes you can make. That'll be more on Rowan, but we'll talk a little bit about how the story structure for a D&D or Pathfinder game is different than something you'd find somewhere else. With that said, 2 years and 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Scene. I'm swindling a noble in my shop. Get a note from a beggar child named Robbie. Note says Fox. Toby is missing. I go to the den and discuss what to do with Kalia, Ilvana, Rogar, Nura, and Rashid. Kalia says Toby got kidnapped by Sandrang Guild guards. I decide to rescue him alone, sneak into their headquarters and find Toby in the barracks. Also find requisition orders from someone named Boz. The Sandrang Guild knows about the den and Boz has a deal for us. Weird. Back to the den. Everyone's worried. Kalia says we should investigate a Sandrang airship crash. Toby and I go. He seems sad. Ship was tampered with and crashed on purpose. Boz did it. Go to Boz's house. Find incriminating evidence. Also, he executed the guards from the barracks. Also found a guard. Kidnap him because Boz would have killed him. On the way out, find a secret basement with a monster inside and a summoning circle. Also a journal. Back to the den. The guard agrees to be an ally if we send his parents a note telling them that he's okay. He's just a kid after all. I say sure and send it off. Also, Kalia found me a shop assistant named Ling. From the journal, Boz has an estate elsewhere. Also, he found some kind of item at a cult temple in a desert that's made him a powerful wizard. Also mentioned someone named Draylin. Uh-oh. Draylin is bad news owlbears, and Kalia knows him from the past when she, had an original den, and he murdered all of them. Kalia explains she paid off the unseen hand to protect the den and manage our contracts. Everyone's mad. GIF. We decide to negotiate out of the unseen hand contract. Bernard of the Hand is a real arrogant prick, but he agrees to fuck off. Hey, remember the note I sent to the guards' parents? Turns out Boz had their house burned down and kidnapped them too. Childhood friend Azima is investigating the fire on behalf of her church because it was started by a... Uh-oh. Me and the boys investigate the cult temple. The item Boz found had to do with summoning. I find a book about necromancy in the same temple and keep it. Great idea, right? Of course. Get back to Hadar. Get an invitation to a coronation party for Boz. Convenient. Get him wasted at his own party. Channel my inner bard and convince him to leave with me. It works. Plant one of his own journals as evidence on him and turn him into Azima. Boz is jailed. Still, smash cut. Me and the boys and Azima are at Boz's estate. The guards' parents are in the basement being tortured by us. Rescue them. Also find some more journals. Draylin definitely told Boz to summon. This game of cat and mouse starts with Draylin. I try to convince everyone he's behind it all, but no one listens to me. Meanwhile, the Assassin's Guild is after me and Toby. Don't have time for this. Need more info on Draylin to prove he's evil. We could really use a diviner. Sheena has joined the party. Sheena has also joined Ling's party. And they make us some long-distance communication necklaces we can use to send scrolls through. Break into a government office and steal Draylin's immigration papers. Now we know where he lives. Go there, find a burn-up note and half of a wax seal of a blinded stag. Smash cut to the den. Rashid recognizes the blinded stag as the seal of the Rulin royal family. They were all killed in the war, but 2 royal children were rumored to be alive. Draylin's the fallen prince of Larulin. Meanwhile, he's been sucking up to Katarina, the next woman in line for the Hadaran throne. Find out their thing now, and they have a trip planned to Larulin. Weird, says Rashid. Draylin would be recognized and killed on sight. He must be taking her to a location where his family still has support. Toby and I go to Larulin. Sheena and Nura join us separately. There's a ship under attack near the port. Draylin set up the attack. Oh well, I saved the ship and Katarina, and unfortunately also Draylin. He puts on a big show thanking me and inviting us to a party he's throwing in honor of Katarina. Suspicious. Go to the party. Privately tell Draylin I know who he is. He's not fazed. We get a note saying Katarina's relatives has been kidnapped back in Hadar, and so is Kalia. Party's attacked by I make Toby stay with Katerina and Draylon. I save a bunch of people. Katerina is grateful. Draylon is annoyed. I say we should take a ship back home. Draylon says we should just teleport there. I say no. Draylon insists that yes, we should. Gets cocky. Says no matter what happens, he'll still win. He'll even let Sheena cast the teleport spell. I send a note to the den and tell them all to gather and be ready for battle. Sheena bluffs and says she'll teleport us to the college. Draylon believes her. We teleport to the den. Surprise round. I get Draylon where he stands. Michaelia keeps him alive long enough to be jailed, tried, and executed for his crimes. And now we hear dealing with Sharasha, Draylon's sister, and the last heir to the Larulan throne. Shut it.
That was a more detailed summary, but I think there's a lot of interesting things that we can kind of pick at. First off, the den. The den is a bit of a thieves' guild. So that kind of explains what that is. The den is essentially kind of a small thieves' guild in the city of Hadar. Most of the characters that she mentioned are members of the den. And one other thing on my end that I wanted to point out after kind of that summary, which was pretty thorough, is you may, if you were listening closely to that, think that the way that Draylon kind of died or met his end was anticlimactic. But one of the things as a DM that you need to kind of evaluate is what would be a climax appropriate to the character of the party. This game has been very, very social. Combat's been pretty minimal. We've been starting to get into it more in this next story arc, the one with Sharashia. But a lot of it has been kind of manipulating people, being sneaky. It's a thieves' den. They're not typically going to be in a whole lot of, hardcore face-to-face confrontations. So tricking Draylon into a situation that was essentially a death trap for him was very much appropriate, and it definitely felt dramatic. It felt high stakes at the time. The conversation that they were having, going back and forth when what was her name? The queen to be?
Katerina.
When Katerina still trusted Draylon, and they were kind of negotiating behind her back about how to get back and arranging this plot to trap him. It was kind of a high stakes, dramatic scenario, and so even though the combat only lasted a round in Draylon, I don't believe even got a turn.
Didn't.
That might feel kind of cheap, but I think it would have felt even cheaper if I had engineered a way to steal that away, when really that whole story arc was won through a social encounter, which is more appropriate to Altea's character. And I didn't want to take that away from her.
Which I really appreciate. And I feel like that's, I don't know, that kind of touches on a subject of a different video we can do about how it can kind of be difficult as the DM because your characters are meant to die. When you make a villain, they're supposed to be killable.
Or defeatable in whatever way.
Yeah. I will be very sad when Layla dies because she's the best villain I've ever made, but that's her job. That's why she exists, and that's why Draylon existed too.
Yep.
Possibly still exists.
They exist to be a pain in the ass until the day that they no longer are capable of being a pain in the ass. And I think that Draylon is one of the best villains that I've made, and I was sad to see him go without combat because I did have some pretty cool tricks up my sleeve for that. But I'm not sad to see him go in the way that he did necessarily because it felt appropriate. And as the DM, big part of your job is to kind of make your players happy. You should feel happy too, but a big part of that should be from your players feeling cool, feeling like they overcame a challenge. And I think we accomplished that, and so Draylon did his job.
The other thing to note is that I talked a lot about Boz. So that's a... Okay, we'll come back to him in a minute. But that's a difference between between the styles of how Phil and I both DM. So Phil is more of like an arc DM, like a 3-arc DM, and I am more of a single big bad or like a single group of big bad who you meet immediately. I think it was the first session you met Layla.
She was introduced not as Layla, but I did meet... I was aware of Layla as the Dark One from session 1.
So fun.
My campaigns, and it's true, I do tend to... I'm a big believer in making your stories arced, because if you've been a DM for a long time, especially for a group, it's a little easier with a duet to keep a game going. But if you've been a DM for a group for a long time, groups phase out. Someone gets busy, or you miss a couple of sessions due to a holiday. Things fizzle. Things might even kind of implode dramatically. But it's not as common. I think it's more common than not for games to fizzle out rather than to kind of reach the campaign end. At least that's been my experience. And so it's much easier if you kind of arrange these, 3 to 5 level story arcs with one villain where if you have to end it after that, it still feels like a cohesive plot. And even if you get through that, the Boz story arc, which was my level 1 to 4 or 5, it ended earlier than I thought it would. But if you have those early plot arcs and then the game ends, halfway into the Draylen plot arc, at least you have a satisfying story with those characters. And so it doesn't, to me at least, as a DM, it doesn't feel as bad when those campaigns die if you've had a couple of those story arcs end successfand.
I'd agree with that. I think it would be fun to try your DMing style. I don't know if I could pull it off. I don't think so.
And maybe we'll have to do a video on it, because I think there are a lot of advantages. There are some disadvantages, which is, like one that I'm facing now is that I feel like the Shirashia story arc with her as kind of one of several primary villains, I don't think it's quite as satisfying or character appropriate as the Draylen plot arc was. I think the Draylen plot arc might be, if this was a trilogy, I think it might be the best story out of the trilogy.
And I'd agree with that. Like, that's no shade at you. I love him, but I hate him. Draylen,
he's the character that you love to hate. And Boz was more of an annoying little piece of garbage.
Gnome?
Yeah, he was a gnome wizard, I think. Mm-hmm. And he was annoying and arrogant and very in your face about it, but he wasn't very clever about it. He was caught up in his own hubris. So he was very much like an intro level villain, because he wasn't very good at covering his tracks, because he just assumed he could get away with it. But we'll have to do some videos about story arcs, because there's a lot that I could say about the way that you structure your campaign, whether it be story arcs or one overarching campaign.
Is Boz still alive?
I think he's still in jail, but you care a lot more about Boz being alive or dead than I do.
I do. Okay, alright, listen. So when we went to the estate, I picked up a camel hair sweater of his, because obviously camel hair is very itchy. And I made sure that he could wear it, because his jail cell is probably very cold, and I just want to make sure that he is comfortable and taken care of.
Man, I mean, you keep torturing him like this, I'm going to have him come back. So, anyway, any more kind of final plot points or clarifications to go over? I guess one other is the timeline that Rowan gave made it sound a lot like Sheena and Ling were an item, like basically the first session that Sheena was introduced in. That happened A, off camera, and B, much later and over a longer course of time. But I do, especially with these duets, I do try to have some of the other characters have interpersonal relationships, whether they be contentious or romantic or friendly or rivalries, because it makes them feel more complete.
Mm-hmm. Elvana and Rashid end up together, and Toby and Taya obviously end up together too.
Yeah.
In the book, they're together from the start, because it was very awkward to write their relationship developing. This is like 10 videos that we need to do now, so anyway.
Yeah, we're just going to have to watch our old videos and get our to-do list or our checklist. Anyway, if you have any ideas for videos, because you just don't think we're putting enough on our own list, let us know in the comments. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments.
This has been Open Book Games. We'll catch you probably shortly after this for our next appendix video. Bye.
Bye.